Yeah, so that's, I think, one thing to bear in mind here. And there's a couple of other things. This is before we get ready here. Is to, no. What we're doing is we're doing some of the backdrop for the text, so we can vibrate a little bit with Nachman here. Okay, so on page 10. Now this is a nice text here, where Nachman, if I were to say that one of the things that Nachman, like the Zohar, is calling for, it is for a kind of awakening. It is a kind of hitollut, a kind of arousal, if you want to say arousal, like eros, right? It's the rising of eros. In Hebrew, hitollut means awakening and the awakening of eros. And the Zohar. Sorry? From my dad? I don't know. No. Yes, it's from below. And so there is a tremendous awakening of the ways in which we hear, move, see, move through the world. And so here's a famous passage here, and I actually like what Howard Schwartz did with it, but the source I have is slightly different. It's not quite as elaborated. Zikalon lirshom ha'maseh at the top of the page, right? When once I'm going to write this down as a memento, right? The event, the story, that once when Nachman was on the road, he slept outside on a bed. And outside might have been literally outside, although Howard Schwartz interprets it to be more in the inn, where he's staying. He's crying out in his sleep. And all the Hasidim ran to him, and they woke him up. And he went in to the house, which would make it seem like he was outside. And Sefer ve'amar shematzah sham mevu'ar oto inyan. He opens a book and he says, "Here, there's an explanation of this. Ki oto habayit hainu kretschme, aksanya was an inn. Isn't that interesting? From suckling, we probably call it saplings, right? But like suckling trees, right? Suckling trees. Trees that shelo nizkenu adayin, that didn't have the chance to grow old yet, right? And v'amar shepatach et oto sefer kimdumeh shaya midrash, and it was though it were a kind of midrash on the event, and it was written in that place, when one kind of harvests a tree before it cuts down a tree before its time, it's as though one is killing a soul. And so in some of the passages here, there's a notion, right, which is typical of Nachman's trans-species understanding of things, that trees have souls. And so I guess how would we work with this? What is Kodem Zmano? What is Zmano? What does Zmano mean? Are there things that don't have, what is the Zman for an old growth redwood, right? What is it for, bamboo's really not a tree. Right? Yeah. Okay. But that's different because there's all sorts of different understandings for this, but what does it mean? Is this a poetic way of being in the world, or is this saying something else about how we listen to things, and how do we? What frame do we use? I'm just give you an example, okay? Famous example that you probably heard on NPR 2 weeks ago. I say famous because probably the people here have on occasion listened to NPR, if you're in North America, okay, or in the United States. We're not all from there. The reintroduction of the wolf in Yellowstone does, right? Okay, so we know that the wolves kill some of the deer, which means that not only are there little grasses, but trees start to grow. Trees start to grow, and all of a sudden, bird life starts coming. The trees kind of anchor the soil, right, so that the soil doesn't go into the bodies of water, and all of a sudden there's more deeper running water, and fish start returning, and so on and so on, and you start seeing a whole ecosystem, So, what, with those eyes, right, this is like moving to Zalman's notion of Gaia as a living thing, which is where I was going to be starting, and I want to say, Asher Ladonai ki ga'o ga'a ki Gaia. Right? Okay, I'm singing to God because Gaia is rising. Ga'a. Right? And if we want to say that the earth is the interface of God, if we want to call it Shekhinah or some other interface, and Zalman was fond of Gaia as a way, how does that alter the way in which we see this incredibly complex web of life, where we cannot possibly know what the impact of something will be, in much the same way as some people spoke about that yesterday at the smicha ceremony. So, listening to the cry of the tree, I remember as a kid in Chicago, the south side of Chicago, when they were widening, Cornell Drive and Jackson Park, and people do this all the time, I guess. And they cut down all these trees, and people say, your highway tax is at work, and someone crossed out the T, right? So, but I don't know what that means exactly, right? Because it's complicated, and we use it for us. So what does that mean? If we understand these as beings with whom we share the planet in some ways, what follows from that? Okay? And so that's just a very broad sense right here, the cry of the trees. Now I want to show you something from Nachman about the cry of the beasts. See, before we get to the text here. It's like, it's like the Kentucky or the Super Bowl where they have like 12 hours of run-up of grandpa. 12 hours of Chatzi Kaddish. No, I don't know. And then you have the grandpa. And so this is on 21 and 22. And from what Hannah and others know is my favorite story of the switched children. And so here we're moving from the meadow, right? So the meadow, what's a meadow? A meadow is some sort of transitional space, right, between an urban space and, say, a forested space, right? It's kind of it's slightly domesticated, or at least there's a domesticated presence there, along with wildflowers. So it's kind of in between, in a way, right? But forest for Nachman, like his great-grandfather, wasn't only afraid of the forest, as I think many people were and many Jews were. Right? It was a distinctly non-Jewish place, the forest. It was not kind of punctuated with Jewish symbolism and everything. It's a place of listim and robbers but for Nachman, it's very interesting that it was the place of transformation. And he would talk about wandering in the forest and getting lost in the forest, and talking about the value of not knowing where you're going. Right? And what can emerge? Yes.
In the sense that the forest was Bamidbar.
Yes. In a sense, I would say that's true for many of the others, okay, of many of the predecessors to Nachman. But for Nachman, it was also, well, we'd have to, let me work with that. There is a way in which he did liken it to Midbar as a place of transformation. Okay, and I can show you some examples of that. But he spoke in this particular tale about, it was the place where you got lost, but it's the place where you ultimately found out who you are, right? Or you gained the tools so that you could come back to the city. And I want to say that it maybe is an inadvertent kind of juxtaposition that Nachman makes between Ir and Ya'ar, same letters, where Ir is the city and Ya'ar, the woods, and Ya'ar is the place of awakening of Hitov, right? So that you can then go back and do the healing that's needed in the city. Okay? And that's kind of the way it works in the story. And there's a forest man who's like a shaman who can go up and down through different realms, in time, out of time. And this shaman helps the hero and his, I'll call him sidekick, but that's not fair, his other half, maybe that's it, how to listen to the cries of all the animals and the chirping of the birds. And at first they're totally freaked out by it. They are freaked out and they hide. But then the forest man, right, who's this like, shaman figure, says, no, it's the song that all the animals are singing to the moon, right? Because the moon shows them the way. The moon, of course, is the Shema. And the moon, and what happens is that at dawn, there is the song, and there's also this incredible chucha, or chucha. And the chucha is a word that appears once in the Talmud, and Rabbi Barona, and it said that one day when he juxtaposed tefillah, the gula li tefillah, he gave out a chucha that lasted the entire day. Okay, so gula li tefillah, of course, is talking Ga'al Yisrael, going straight from that into the Amidah. But Kabbalistically, it means bringing together the unifying the masculine and feminine faces of God. So it's talking about the restoration of the moon. The moon has lost her name and lost her song. And what we have to do is make sure that she gets her song back. She still has something very powerful, and they give her this gift, this garment, in gratitude for what she is. Okay? So, yeah.
I think it's important that it happens at night when they're lost.
It happens at dawn.
Well, it's dark,
Right.
because your anxiety of being lost heightens all your senses. You start to listen and worry about every sound you hear. So I think
That's
that's
beautiful. And so what happens is all of a sudden you can see on page 21, where it says reader number 3. Okay, reader number 3 here. It says after there's the chucha, you can see the chucha at the top of the page, and all of that. Acharka, itu oznam vishamu. They kind of inclined their ears and they heard in a new way. Shu kol nekina v'zimra nifla'a v'nora me'od. This was the most beautiful, wondrous, and awesome melody. And they deepened their listening, and and their appreciation grew, knowing that this was the greatest pleasure. They hear this, and and so on and so forth. So it's like a reframing of things. So what happens when you're afraid? When you're afraid, your senses are jammed. Everything is jammed, and you cannot hear the beauty. It's noise. It's noise. Then I can imagine Arthur here saying all those barbarians, right? And the way and it's a beautiful interpretation of the Shema. But when the fear goes down and you learn to listen, you see the patterns. All of a sudden, you come to see that this is incredibly beautiful. Do you see how this is similar to the Nikodah Tovah of the Rasha, right? It's not identical, but there's a way that you come to hear in a new way so that you can hold it. And actually, what ends up happening after that is that, the forest man is a really good teacher, because he's ultimately, they wanted, after this, they're ready to stay in the forest for a long time. And they said, no, you got to go back to this yishuv. And he gives them an age-old present, kind of, as it were, indigenous, if we want to play that card. And it's saying, right here, if you flip over, it's on page 22, and it's a reader number 4, Okay? V'amar lahem adam hayar, the forest man said, Ma ze chidush etzlechem, halo yesh etzli kli. I have this incredible instrument, shekibalti me'avotai, that I received from my ancestors. Shehem yoshu me'avot avoteim, that this is an ancestral vessel, right, an instrument. Shakli asuya im alim v'tzivonim ka'ela, which is one of my favorite things. It's made out of leaves and colors. Okay, and maybe that's why you think of Frederick. Right. And ukishemanichim הכלי הזאת על איזה בימה או עוף, אזי תכף מתחיל לנגן הניגון הזה. It plays their inner music. Could you imagine? If you put what is that stethoscope? What is that instrument that inner melody that is your song, or your evolving song, that you get to hear that? And actually, that's what he needed to do. He needed to take that, he gives it away, ultimately trades it for the ability to discern one thing from another, and he's able to do tikkun because he's able, first, not to freak out when he hears the roar of all the animals, because he knows how to interpret that. And he also is able to hear the music, the broken music of the Shekhinah, and restore the Shekhinah, and of course the moon, and all that stuff. So, I'm thinking, what is this kind of listening? What happens to our way of listening when we don't go to the forest, right? And when we don't listen for the sounds of, as it were, of our garden growing, right? And how does that affect our relationship to the earth? How does that, and when do we notice when there is the soul crying out? So, we're ready almost to go to the text. Just about. Yeah, I'll give you one more, right? From for example, from the seven beggars, right? From the heart of the spring. The man of true kindness collects songs and riddles, right? Songs and riddles, and gives it ultimately to the spring, so that the spring has time, so that the spring comes into the world. And Anna, you'll probably remember this too. This is the notion. This is like a theme in Nachman, that what we give the Ein Sof, if that indeed the spring is the Ein Sof, which could probably mean it was Bina, but okay. That what does the Ein Sof need our mitzvot done in this specific way or that specific way? What Nachman says, at least sometimes, is no. Does the Ein Sof really need? No, the Ein Sof needs is our love. What the Ein Sof needs is our love. And we show our love, he says, through the musicality of our life and through comedy. Okay? By which he means gifts that maybe aren't needed. But they come, they're the emblem of the greatest love precisely because they come with no strings except instruments attached. Right? And so there's something like this going on here, which is important. Okay, so I want to say that at the beginning, I was about to say that this teaching in general is not only dedicated to the teaching of Reb Nachman, but also Reb Zalman, and that it is a meditation on the lines "V'havienu l'shalom mi'alva kanfot ha'aretz v'tolichenu l'chomriyut li'artzenu." It's on page 1, but you know that. That is, it's saying this is a kind of homecoming to a home that we couldn't have conceived of earlier, till we could conceive somehow of the earth as that blue dot, right? As Carl saying, right? That pale blue dot, right? Or to see it as a breathing, living space in a way that some of our ancestors did get, I might add, but in a different way. And so, bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to the earth. Okay, I have no trouble reading it, Otsenu, in terms of, in terms of Israel and so forth.
To our earth, to our earth.
But it's also to our earth, right? It is a kind of coming back. That if we're going to say the Shema, and if we're going to weave together, the tzitzit, which is, again, Rabbi Arthur teaches, is a place where we connect to the world outside of us. It's our garment of self and the air, right? That if we're going to do this, if we have to hold something of Artseinu in a very broad way too, to acknowledge our place in the kind of in the planet, as it were, and to go into that deep listening of the Shema, which is also a deep listening of the many, many sounds and colors and voices within us, without us. And sometimes, at moments, we're able to do that. Other times we practice at it. And that's fine. That's fine too. And so now, on page 11. Okay, and I'll point to, this is a text, I really like this text. It's a totally composite text. It's a compost. And I mean, years ago, I had this little booklet that Aaron Appelfeld wrote. Edited. And the teachings of Nachman. And when I first read it, it took me years to understand. I said, wait a second, I know that from. He wove together something from multiple. I gave you the sources, okay? It's from about 6 different sources that he wove it together, okay? And it's all about Olam Hanikum. Okay? And so this is on page 11. And you can see that he's going to start talking from the Torah of the Void of Kalala Panui. Okay? Yeah. Shekol Chochma Yesh La Zemer Miyuchad, that each kind of wisdom has its own melody. Shemitocho Inimshechet Ve'olechet, from which it issues forth. Kol Chochma Lefi Vechinata U'Medregeta, each kind of wisdom according to its rung. And so it goes from each rung until the very first point of creation, which is the very beginning of the process of emanation, some keter place, v'sham lemala mimenu she'en od makif, to the place beyond which there is no surrounding entity, no whole, what's around it? No surrounding sphere, right? And for Nachman, okay, that which you know is the pnimi, you've internalized it, and that which is the question in which you are living, that's surrounding you, that is your atmosphere, that's the makif. And once you have kind of absorbed that old makif becomes your new pnimi, and you're open to the next makif. But when you go beyond that, there's only Ein Sof, only Ein Sof. And he goes on to say the wisdom of Ein Sof, right, is that which surrounds the Chalala Panui, this empty space, and all the creations are within there. And he goes on to say that there is actually a melody. He's very unusual insofar compared to many of the other Kabbalists. Most of the other Kabbalists, what melody takes you to a silence? For Nachman, melody takes you to silence, which takes you to melody. Okay? Yeah.
Is he really kind of imitating the Neoplatonic imagery of the cosmos surrounded by the void, and ultimately the Logos is the one that is the ultimate Chokhmah that creates the cosmos? Is he sort of paralleling that?
It's similar in some ways, but he has at least two main understandings of the Chalala Panui. One, it's really empty. The other is, there's a Meshivu there. And he plays off of both of those things. But he says every wisdom in the world, even Apikorsu has its own music, right? That's the melody of the epichorus. With, okay, some of you. Yeah, Shir Yaakov. Okay. Are you here? No, okay. So, you know, everything has its own kind of melody, and that's kind of the arch melody, is the melody of Ein Sof, okay, which is kind of amazing that, that he has that teaching. And now, let's go on here. If you want to look more at the text, they're on page 16. I give you the full text here, because this is really edited. Okay. And it goes, Ulativ lavo sh'Hashem yafok l'chol ha'amim safa brura, that all the nations will be able to will have this clear utterance, will be able to speak in this clear way and understand the divine. Az tavo, and he brings this verse from Shir Hashirim. Az, I think it's Tashuri. Merosh Amana, that is, gaze forth from the peaks of Amana, which Nachman reads, sing or be sung from the peak of faith or trust. From this, from the peak of all of the of this deep trust in the divine that undergirds all. And what is that song? He says, it's not only a gazing, but a singing, right? Sing that song, which is Shir Hashirim. And if you read the entire passage there, he goes on to say that this is a Shir Chadash, this is a new song, which we haven't sung yet, that it is Shir Merubah, that it is a fourfold song. And here I'm just going to riff on Rav Kook a little bit. I don't think Nachman quite goes there. But the fourfold song of Rav Kook that you all know, it's the song of the self, the song of the people, the song of the species, and the song of the planet, right? And so there it is this fourfold song, which is the song that contains all songs, Shir Hashirim. And then he goes on to talk about the song that comes Derech HaTeva. And I want to say, if you look at so many of the sources that I love, Teva is lowly for them. You understand? I don't like it, but it's what it is, right? Nachman is one of the people for whom it's different in many ways, okay? And he's one of the people who you can say, and I know it means something different in the original context, that Elohim equals HaTeva, equals 86, right? That the earth is the skin of God, so to speak, the garment of the divine. And he goes on, let's see, where he's at 263. Yaakov Avinu shalach et aseret shvatav el Yosef, when Jacob sent his sons down to Joseph in Egypt, shalach imahem nigun shel Eretz Yisrael. He sent with them the melody of the land of Israel. This is what I'm moving for. V'zeh sodchu mizimrat haaretz bichlechem. Right? Take the choicest produce of the land in your vessels, which of course Nachman is going to be reading, right? Moshe Pilesh Rashi Zimrat Milashon Zemer from the sun. Read it not as the choicest, that which has been pruned away to be the finest, right? Zemer, but take the melody of the land in your vessels. Of course, what's the question? What's the vessel? What's the vessel? It could be yourself. Right. Right. So that's, you're an instrument, right? V'haya k'nagenam nagen, right? When the minstrel began to play, right? And it's always read in Hasidic text. When you began to be played as a nigun, when you become a nigun. You understand? When the Ruach HaKodesh blows through your shofar. Okay? I don't know what you would do with that one, but it would be good. Right, it's the sound here, right? That is the cry, that is the call, that is the music, right?
But it could also be, in a sense, when Yosef was sold to the Ishmaelites and he went out and he ended up succeeding wildly in Egypt, but he may have lost, in some sense, even though he still had a connection to God, he kind of lost his Yiddish and Neshama. He named
lost the
his,
melody.
well, he named his first son Menashe, and having to do with
Right,
forgetting
Oblivion.
my father's house. So they're bringing the lost piece of Yosef back to him by bringing him the song of, Tanakh.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, we'll read this a little bit more, and I'll mention what's in the part that we're not reading. And then here comes the part, someone want to read this? This is the part that kind of we were singing, or going to sing before. It goes, keep kol ro'eh v'ro'eh.